Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to TLBTV, Eradicating Programmed Ignorance. I'm your host, Roger Landry, the founder of the Liberty Beacon Project. And we've got a really, really good show for you today because anybody who isn't dead, living in a cave or under a rock, has got to realize what's going on right now in this country. In my 60 plus years, my 15 presidential cycles, have never seen a president of the United States treated as badly as Donald Trump is being treated. Now, I'm not going to tell you I think the man is an angel. I'm not going to tell you everything he does is perfect. And I'm not going to tell you I agree with everything he does. I don't care if it would have been Obama, whether it's Trump, whether it was all the way back to Ford. It really doesn't matter. Being president of the United States brings along with it a certain level of, or a command of, respect. We all see this is not being afforded this president, whether it is the screaming crybaby liberals who have their panties in a wad, whether it is the mainstream media who can't stop lying, who is still in shock over the loss of their, their puppet, Hillary, or it is the deep state, which I would say their strongest mechanism of action is in fact the intel community. We are looking at a president who is under fire daily. There is a concerted effort to make him look stupid. There is a concerted effort to treat him with disrespect. There is a concerted effort to undermine everything he does. Ninth Circuit Court. But if you stop to think, okay, if you stop to think, who does this hurt and why is it being accomplished? The only people this treatment of a sitting U.S. president harms is we the people. Because it is our business he cannot get accomplished because of all of the crap that's being forced down his throat. Whether it's having a senior advisor resign, whether it's having a constitutionally correct executive order countermanded by a court which in fact does not have the judicial or the constitutional right to do so in the first place, it doesn't matter. Whether it is riots in the streets that do what? That damage our property, that harm us as citizens, not the individuals perpetrating it. When you have paid provocateurs being paid by the likes of George Soros to make your life and my life miserable and to stymie the promises of a president who was put in office under a hugely popular move or movement. We are looking at what I can only term as a civil war in the United States at this point, a soft core civil war. But right now, it's not so much between we the people. What we're looking at right here is a situation where damage is being done in the form of what we the people were promised Trump can't deliver. Or if he can deliver, it's going to be delayed, or it'll be hindered by what's being forced down his throat. It actually goes a lot deeper than that. We're looking at a president who has been threatened by congressional members. We're looking at a president who is threatened by senators. We're looking at a president who was threatened by outgoing heads of intelligence departments. These were not veiled threats. These were open threats. So what we're looking at today is something that is unprecedented. So as we go forward in this conversation with our great contributor, Greg Ford, who has a lot to say about this, and my outstanding co-host, Rebecca Mahan, what we're going to be discussing is how the Intelligence Department and how Congress is playing a role in literally sabotaging a newly elected president. And when I say a newly elected president, the only reason this guy is sitting in the White House is because we, the people, put them there. So when they step up to sabotage a president, whether it be the Senate, whether it be Congress, whether it be the State Department with holdover from the Obama regime, sabotaging what Trump is trying to do, or what the Secretary of Defense is trying to do, it is, in fact, okay, all of this is sabotage. And all of this is basically, I hate like hell to use the word treason, but it does border on sedition. Anyway, Rebecca, what do you got to say about this? Because that wasn't an easy open, and I wasn't pussyfooting around.
No, it wasn't. And I think that you hit things right on the mark. And as far as whoever is in office, we need to respect that. The things that we are seeing and that are going on, not only that are causing inner city and inner community turmoil, we have something that is affecting the presidency one-on-one, and this is absolutely unacceptable.
Agreed. So why don't you bring our guest in, or not, actually he's not a guest anymore. He's a contributor to this show. He's a regular.
He's a regular.
Let's bring Greg in and hear his opening statements, because Greg's not bashful.
No, he isn't. Welcome, Greg. We are super excited to have you again here and being a regular now on Eradicating Programmed Ignorance. We're super excited to hear and have you share your thoughts on what's going on.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And I'm glad to hear you guys are super excited, because the CIA is not super excited to hear from me. All right. This has been truly amazing what has gone on for the last 21 days. Now, I never thought that I'd have something to share and be in the same league with an elected president of the United States, but yes, I do. And I think everybody would be glad to hear this, is the Ninth Circuit Court, the illustrious Ninth Circuit Court, headquartered in San Francisco, has, of course, turned down our president, our elected president, his request for border security and immigration security. Okay. Now, on the face of it, you know, it's pretty amazing. I've never seen anything like this happen. But and he did this for national security. We are in the middle of a large global conflict, and he was attempting to establish what he feels is a safe zone, a no-go zone for dangerous people. Now, in doing that, the courts told him something like, no, you can't do this. You simply cannot do this. And in my case, with the Ninth Circuit Court, my case has been up for the Ninth Circuit Court, where myself, following the laws of the land, right to the letter, the courts established something like this, is that it's okay for the CIA and the military intelligence to torture me, okay, to rendition me, kidnap me, abduct me when I filed charges to stop torture, okay? I'm the first US citizen ever to have this happen, all right? So I'm in the same category right now. In fact, my case was ruled upon 9 days before our elected president, Donald Trump. So we have a situation here where we are both going to the Supreme Court. I don't know if Don would like to do this together. Okay, the president and I would like to do this together and go sit before the Supreme Court. I wouldn't mind doing it, okay? because, quite simply put, it goes something like this: is when I was in Iraq, tracking terrorists, attempting to fight a war that we are right in the middle of, questionable war, but it was still a war. All right. Weapons of mass destruction were discovered by me. They were the weapons of mass destruction discovered by a sitting president. In fact, it was the president whose father was one of the founding members of the Central Intelligence Agency. And those weapons were smuggled into Iraq, sold to Saddam Hussein by the same agency that is attacking our president right now. And when I say attacking our president, I mean exactly that. In fact, if our president was smart, he would be getting Julian Assange out of that two-room embassy, Ecuadorian embassy, and bringing him to Washington to find out exactly how much the CIA is attacking him. All right. So we have a situation here that amounts to me going up with my 1 ton of documentation, going to the courts and saying, yes, we have torture brought to you by the Central Intelligence Agency. We have weapons of mass destruction that are wandering around loose in the globe, wandering around loose. They're looking for those weapons right now. All right. And billions of dollars were taken and routed through the Cyprus Express, and which General Karpinski confirmed, along with me, that Paul Bremer, the associate ambassador to Iraq, was filtering through to private contractors these billions of dollars to Cyprus from Iraq. So we have a situation at this point to where all of this corruption, which has been aided and abetted by the CIA, is now in trouble. All right. And that's all it takes. I cannot even get the courts to even give me a trial. All right. To get my evidence before and bring to trial the people that are responsible. They stated quite simply, they can't tolerate it. All right. That would implicate presidents. It would implicate agencies, including the Cocaine Importation Agency. Oh, I'm sorry, the CIA, excuse me. That would implicate them in crimes of treason, to be the first. I've noticed now that they started calling our president guilty of treason. Okay. Now, in this case, I would like to say something about this recently resigned director of what is it? National Security. Okay, a Michael Flynn. All right. At one time or another, I worked for Michael Flynn. Okay, and Michael Flynn, yes, he has spent most of his life in the intelligence business, serving this country. And from what I understand, recently, he actually traveled, okay, and contacted a foreign head of state. Now, why would he do that? He had a complete team. I've run many intelligence operations. He had to have had a complete team authorizing him to do this. He wasn't just some foot soldier like me, okay, in the intelligence business. No, he was head of Defense Intelligence Agency, the CIA of the military, in other words. Now, Mr. Flynn, okay, obviously had something on his mind that was of great importance. And from what I can understand from my limited position is something like this. He wanted to find out why the Central Intelligence Agency, why ex-President Obama, and why Hillary Clinton had ordered a hit, okay, a murderous hit on the Ecuadorian embassy, and to hit and kill Julian Assange. Well, this is where it gets pretty amazing. All right. It appears now that Julian Assange had been set up by the CIA and a group called Todd and Claire. Okay. If anybody's heard of this please let me know. But Todd and Claire is a dating agency, and the amazing thing is you won't find it on any site right now. Todd and Claire is a dating site set up by the former president of eHarmony. Okay, you know that wonderful meet somebody and fall in love, website. Okay, yes, they were conspiring to destroy Julian Assange before he could release evidence on not only that supported me and my case and the general on the torture issue in Iraq, but also on Pizzagate. And Pizzagate goes something like this. It appears now that Hillary Clinton, her husband, several other presidents, okay, and heads of state were involved in a pornography and pedophile ring, okay? And this was taking place in the Caribbean at a place called Orgy Island, appropriately named, okay? And this Orgy Island was run and owned by Jeffrey Epstein. I don't see Jeffrey Epstein's name anywhere, and it should be in the front pages. Jeffrey Epstein actually flew these heads of state and these candidates for the presidency of the United States, flew them to Orgy Island, where they engaged in underage sex with juveniles, all right? So we have something as explosive as that. Julian Assange has the documentation on this case, on this situation. Very clearly, illegal methods of wiretapping and monitoring were used to take place to monitor these phone calls by Michael Flynn. So what I would like to suggest now at this point, let's bring back Ed Snowden, all right? So Ed Snowden could certainly shed some more light on these suspicious wiretapping conversations. So we have a situation here where the Ecuadorian embassy was hit, it was attacked, and the best friend of Julian Assange was killed. And with that in mind, the entire Latin America and South America are now in an uproar. All right, they want to know why their embassy was attacked.
Okay, Greg, before we go any further, I've got a couple of things for you. And the first one was, wasn't it over the last couple of days that FBI indicated that through their investigation, they found that Trump was in fact not guilty of treason? So that is my first question. And then the second is there has been information pertaining to the leaks from Julian Assange indicating that there is an ongoing investigation with some of the leaders in our communities that have engaged or allegedly engaged in the pedophilia ring and are in fact undergoing either detention or have been arrested. I don't know if that information is accurate, however, maybe you do.
There is, let me jump in here real quick first, okay? There is information that as many as 72 individuals are under investigation, being, I believe, 30 or 32 members of Congress and the political structure in Washington, D.C., and 40 civilians. Or individuals who are not part of the actual political structure of Washington, D.C. So what we're looking at here is it's exploding in their face. I am not one, and you and I have talked about this before, Greg, I'm not one who believes that everything that went down with General Flynn was as we see it. I do believe that General Flynn was he was the bait at the end of a fishing line. And what he did and what was put out there by him was more or less done in an intentional fashion to see what they could bring forward. Who might be making these leaks? Who finds this information and runs with it first? Where does it filter down through? And
so
from
the
what
shaking of the tree.
from what I've been told, okay, and I do have my sources as well, General Flynn has not been fired, but has been moved to another position outside the public realm where he can be every bit as effective to Donald Trump without having the high-profile public profile that his past position would have held. So even with the Trump, for anybody who believes that Trump doesn't know what he's doing, or that his staff doesn't know what he's doing, and he's being played like a virtual Stradivarius, you're a bunch of idiots. Trump is far from being an idiot, and the people he's surrounded himself with are very intelligent people. The game is being played. I start this out by saying we're in the middle of a civil war. What I want to just extrapolate just a little bit, and then I'll toss it back to you, Greg. What I want to extrapolate from that comment, that statement is, this is not a ground civil war. I'm not talking about Antifa. I'm not talking about the riots in the streets. I'm not talking about the Soros-paid provocateurs who are making $2,500 a month stipend plus $50 an hour for every riot they attend, breaking windows and destroying personal property. I'm not talking about that, okay? When I talk about a civil war right now, I'm talking about a civil war between elitist factions. One of those elitist factions who has a mechanism, and that most effective mechanism is the intel, okay? The intel forces within the United States. The other side of that civil war is the POTUS and his staff and the administrative staff. Okay, so what we're looking at, and those who back him, anybody who believes that any sitting president since the turn of the 20th century, 1900, and I would say even a little bit before that, because you've got the sinking of the Maine in Havana Harbor, okay? Any sitting president, and this was stated by Theodore Roosevelt in 1933, presidents are not elected, they're selected. If you believe that any president has made it to that office in this country without having some strings attached, without owing people, without having some form of control over him, you're an idiot. That includes Trump. I often say the only choices we have left in this country today are picking the lesser of two evils. Trump was definitely the lesser of two evils. And the faction he works for is in total opposition now, the faction that controls the intel agencies in this country. That's the civil war I'm talking about. And the winner of that civil war is going to determine whether or not there's going to be bloodshed in the streets of America. That's the civil war that is going on right now. And if the wrong people win that war, you will see an open revolution in the streets of this country, a bloody revolution. How far off am I, Greg?
Not very. The term for presidential selection is called being in the car, all right? And that's this Orgy Island issue, okay? That is the selection process. Forget any kind of noble-sounding presidential debates.
They have to have strings on you. You're right.
Absolutely. You have to be controllable by the powers that are, all right? If you're not controllable, you're going to do something unusual, say like Teddy Roosevelt did. Guess what? You will not be president of the United States. If you don't have dirt on you and you're very well controllable, you will not be president of the United States. All right? Forget all the idealistic terms. It won't happen. And in this case, yes, the situation was further complicated by Israeli Mossad, who was photographing all the heads of state, okay, and the candidates at Orgy Island. And so does that, in terms of counterintelligence, which I was in for 3 decades, that makes every single politician blackmailable, controllable.
It's not just, okay, the island. This goes on constantly. This goes on in Washington, D.C. You remember the reports of agents in foreign countries, including ambassadors, who would shake their Secret Service people and go have rendezvous with underage prostitutes? Do you remember? And I could go on and on. again, if you are going to be in a position of power, you are absolutely right, Gregory. There need to be controllable strings attached to you. This happens in Washington, D.C. This happens in Berlin. This happens, I don't care where you are, okay? If there is a mechanism that can be used to control you, the first thing these people do is they do a massive amount of research into your background. What are your weaknesses? What do you like? When you were, when you were a private citizen, and you know how well the internet, okay, the NSA can track everything you do on the internet. How many times did you look at porn, and what type of porn did you look at? Okay, these become the mechanisms they use to mold you like a warm block of clay. Every high-ranking official in this country, okay, elected, appointed, not so much, but elected, okay, there is strings attached. Now, this is where you were going, wasn't it, Gregory?
Absolutely. And I remember specifically speaking to one of my chiefs when I was in Europe, and there were issues concerning several of our presidential candidates. And I asked this chief, I said, look, why is this happening? Isn't anybody vetting these people? And he said, no, because by the time they get into the position of running for a high level office like the presidency, everybody knows what dirt is on them, all right? What's the important thing is that can they keep that dirt and all those blackmailable items under control until they get into office, all right? Everyone knows.
In your opinion, Gregory, I've got a question for you, and I know how qualified you are to answer this, and if not, I'll jump in with an answer, but I don't think I'll have to. One individual in my entire lifetime sat in the White House with zero vetting. You couldn't look at his college records. You couldn't look at his financial records. You couldn't look at his Social Security records. You couldn't even look at his birth certificate. And the birth certificate that was finally published was proven by Sheriff Arpaio to be the biggest fraudulent document ever presented to the American public. This individual was never vetted. He is the only president in the United States since I was born in 1954 that never went through any vetting at all. At least the rest of them, they at least pretended to vet. This individual had zero vetting. As a matter of fact, they literally spent millions of dollars to lock every single record he had away. Now, if you don't think that doesn't require a lot of horsepower from the intelligence agencies to accomplish something like this, you're an idiot. How far off that base am I again, Greg?
I will state right now that President Obama, ex-President Obama, his mother was CIA. That makes President Obama, ex-President Obama, a Manchurian candidate. He was already fitted for that position years ago.
They were talking about this in Russia in 1989. I mentioned that on our last show.
Between Indonesia, all kinds of nefarious behavior, and his mother running death squads, okay, in conjunction with the Sukarno elections, all right, yes, that adds for a perfectly controllable offspring, which is what she produced. Father worked for MI6, British intelligence, and helped control the Mau Mau, okay, the Mau Mau uprising of the Kikuyu in Kenya. So we have a situation here where we have somebody that's totally controllable, and all it takes is some real horsepower, okay, making sure he doesn't step on anything the wrong way, like a landmine, putting him into office. And then taking care of all the little leaks like his birth certificate.
What about some of the other mechanisms of control? And again, I'm not going to tell you that I can prove any of this, but you know, we all know the rumors that flew around for over 8 years, okay, that he is gay, okay, a homosexual, that he was a cokehead, okay, and I could go on, These are mechanisms of control.
Yes.
They are. And look at the death wake of people who were ready to jump out and talk about this guy over the last, I don't know, 6 years. Look at, now let's go to the Clintons and look at the death toll in their wake. That number is well over 40, and some say it could actually be as high as 70 dead people in the wake of the Clintons.
Right. That's the number I heard. Now, the Clintons and I have a bit of a history, I have to admit. When I was 18, I was on the presidential security unit of Richard M. Nixon. And I happened to be at the Western White House in San Clemente, California, on board our presidential security boat called the Point Divide. And I can hear all the computers kicking on doing research now. Yes, it was called the Point Divide. And we were listening to the closed circuit television one day, and when the President Nixon was there, and they had somebody by the name of Hillary Rodham, okay, working for the prosecutor's office in Washington, and she was on ranting and raving like a mad woman, like a mashed cat, and she was going on about how
Hillary, come on, it isn't so.
Well, this is before she got all the doctors to manage her, okay, before she opens her mouth. So, and everybody there on the Point Divide was wondering, who is this nasty little vitriolic creature, all right? And then we found out later she was fired. She was fired for lying. She was fired because she simply couldn't tell the truth.
Misrepresentation, yes.
Right, absolutely. So, surprise, she wasn't finished yet, obviously. So she goes on and marries some huckster by the name of William Jefferson Clinton, okay? And next thing we know, when I was in the Caribbean doing drug enforcement in the Caribbean, and we were near an island called the Caste Bank, okay? It's in the Bahamas, and it's actually the island that they used on the start of Gilligan's Island, the TV show Gilligan's Island. That's the Caste Bank. Well, there's these oil wells, oil derricks there that actually were under contract to produce oil, and they were being run by the Zapata Oil Company, and the Zapata Oil Company is headquartered in Colombia, and actually Medellin, Colombia, if anybody's heard of Medellin, Colombia. And the situation was that there was cocaine, and this was known, okay? There was cocaine being sent via tuna boats to these oil derricks and these oil platforms, and they were big. And then the cocaine was loaded onto helicopters, flown to Miami, and then loaded up onto a plane, fixed wing plane, and flown into Mena, Arkansas.
And how they did that was they had a hollow nose on that plane, and they would remove that, they would load it up and bolt it back on, so that it was never actually within the superstructure of the plane. And if the plane came under, if it was searched, they wouldn't find anything.
Yeah, technically that's supposed to be the radar dome system. You know more about that than I do, Roger.
Oh, yes, I do.
But then it was taken up to Mena, Arkansas. I think it is still the #1 hub of transfer for illicit drugs in the United States. All started under the Clinton family, okay, and the Clinton governorship.
Okay, so we've talked about the last couple of administrations, and at the beginning of the show we were talking about basically the chaos that Trump is facing now. So if we can bring this full circle, Greg, if you could elaborate a little bit more on that as we begin to come up on the end of the time for our show today. But This is really, really important that we talk about and let our viewers know what is actually going on and how it could be affecting them.
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to state. Okay, now going from that point in time, yes, there was cocaine being flown in, but now, a few years later, we all of a sudden have Donald Trump, okay, and Hillary Clinton. They're good friends. Everybody's good friends in all of this. He had something to do with her house in New York being purchased. She attended his daughter's weddings, all this, this one big happy family there in Washington and New York and Florida. So what I would like to say, and I think I'm correct on this, is something wasn't right. One of my assets that I recruited in Iraq, okay, in the city of Samarra, was a fellow named Al-Agassi al-Baghdadi, okay? We know him now as Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the founder and leader of ISIS, okay? Now, ISIS is raising hell all over the world. But the interesting thing is, nobody seems to be sure who's really running ISIS. And from what I can understand from my sources state is that there are 4 senators that are busy attacking Donald Trump, all right? And I'll name them, okay? I have no problem naming these senators, okay? The first one was Hillary Clinton. Gosh, have we heard that name before? Hillary Clinton. Second one is Joe Lieberman, okay? All right, gee, imagine, they're all attacking Trump, and we got representatives from Israel involved in this. And then John McCain, all right, who I wrote to initially when I came back from Iraq and said there's massive torture going on at Abu Ghraib prison. And he wrote me a short letter stating he was glad for my patriotism, okay? I feel better because of that. And, all right, the last person is a real joker, a real phony baloney by the name of Lindsey Graham, okay? And so you have the 4 people.
I have one question for you. I have one question for you, okay?
Yes.
Okay, is this the same John McCain who spent 20 minutes talking about things that we would consider of security grade conversations with 2 jokesters, 2 pranksters from Russia who pretended to be the Ukrainian prime minister? Where he discussed openly the business of the, have you seen that? Have you heard about that? Greg?
I don't believe I have. I'll be quite honest.
Literally, this is on YouTube. They have a recording of this.
Mm-hmm.
He had this 20-minute conversation with 2 jokers, 2 pranksters from Russia who called him up and said that one of them said he was the prime minister of Ukraine, and they discussed security measures for 20 minutes, and then they published it. John McCain never vetted them once, but proceeded to discuss security matters on an open line with 2 pranksters from Russia.
And now we have these 4 loud voices attacking the newly elected president of the United States. Okay, that should shed a little light on what is happening as far as I'm concerned.
Who pulls all 4 of their strings? What one oligarch has his hands in every one of their pockets?
Well, let me see. Hillary Clinton.
With an S.
Okay.
Ends with an O's. Soros.
Soros, George. Yeah, George.
All 4 of them are funded in some fashion or another by George Soros.
By George Soros. I was going to say, wasn't it Hillary Clinton who recently sold 20% of our radioactive isotopes to Vladimir Putin, the premier of Russia, and she took a commission?
20% of our uranium assets. Yes, our uranium reserves in this country. Now, when you stop to think, hold on one second. I promise I'll pass it right to you, Rebecca. When you stop to consider the screaming she did at the possible links between Donald Trump and Russia She screamed at the top of her lungs. Not once what is it ever mentioned brokering. She brokered a deal to basically sell 20% of our uranium reserves in this country to the Russians. Please go ahead, Rebecca.
So my question with that is then, my guess would be that was funded through the Clinton Foundation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, her commission was paid into the Clinton Foundation. Rather a nefarious foundation, I might add. All right, because I have more to add to that.
Which is collapsing as we speak. But we've got a couple minutes left. So
okay.
I really want to tweak this down now. Okay, I want to get back. I want you to talk about Flynn a little bit. I want you to talk about what you see coming directly from, not what's going on in Iraq or anywhere else, what you see coming from the intel agencies and how you see them focusing this attack on Trump. Because again, we're not looking at anything normal here. We are looking at a civil war between oligarchs, between elitist factions here. The ones that control the intel and the ones that control the White House. This is what we're looking at. So what do you see as a result of what happened to Flynn? What do you see with the constant pressure being put on Trump from his own intelligence services?
And let me interject too. And then, knowing the things that you know, what kind of a solution would there or could there be to resolve this? Because we just are not at a point where we should be in conflict, especially to this degree.
Well, our president's only been in office for a few days.
Whatever happened to the 100-day honeymoon, Greg? Huh? Whatever happened to it?
You know, and we're facing 4 years of this behavior. All right. But what I'd like to say, and what I really think is the case, is there's real priorities. There's a reason why military people are now involved, because they are looking for military issues and solutions to military problems that are going to upset the world. All right. I've already stated and testified that there are detonators, nuclear detonators running around loose in the hands probably of ISIS. But here's what I really think is, yes, Mr. Flynn is looking for and to find out what happened to the 400, and I say that again, 400 surface-to-air missiles called Stingers, manuportable, that can knock down a plane at 30,000 feet with a range of 5 miles, all right? Those are missing. Those were transferred to Benghazi, all right? And we had Hillary Clinton take a sales commission of $8 million off of those Stingers, all right? Those things are running around loose, and they're knocking planes down. And guess what? It's only a matter of time before they start knocking down planes carrying the heads of state.
So how is all of this focusing on the attack on Trump right now? That's how we need to take this show out, okay?
I believe Donald Trump, the president of the United States, knows of this danger. He wants it stopped, and he wants it stopped right now. The only people that would know about this and know how to find and actually communicate with the people that have these weapons would be an intelligence person operating in the intelligence circles of the world right now, okay? And that person would be Michael Flynn, okay?
And I don't believe for 1 second that Trump has pushed Michael Flynn, General Flynn, out of the picture. I actually have had some information that he is in a position right now where he may actually be a bigger asset to exactly the things we're discussing. But I also think, and how much time do we have left, Rebecca?
We have about 5 minutes or so.
Okay. I also think what needs to come into this picture is something we already talked about a little bit before here. We talked about the massive influence, the strings that are attached to all of the high level. The longer you are in politics, if you're in for 1 or 2 sessions as a congressman and you're gone in 4 years, there's not too many strings attached to you. But if you're there for 30 years, more and more strings get attached. The more power you gain, the more influence you have, the more strings that are attached to you. We're talking about Pizzagate, and I hate the title, but we're talking about the massive influence pedophilia has intentionally that has drawn these people in who may never have been pedophiles, but over a specific period of time, all it takes is the CIA to, for you to walk out of a bar with some girl who says she's 20 years old when in fact she's 17. And now you've got a hook, okay? The hook is set. So what we're looking at, I think, goes even beyond what's going on overseas. I think Trump and his intelligence, his loyal intelligence services have a big leg up on this Pizzagate issue. And there are going to be arrests made. And you have the other side where all of their power is concentrated in these senators, in these congressmen who will be, who will be accused, who will be charged, who will be put in prison. And that declaws and defangs this portion of this elitist caste that they need to do anything they can at this point to keep this from happening. This is one of the biggest sparks in the civil war I described between the two elitist castes that are battling it out right now for power, their hold on power in Washington, D.C. It's Pizzagate or not Pizzagate. It has to be one of the two. If Pizzagate comes to light, there's going to be a massive loss of power on one side. If it doesn't come to light, it's going to probably mean the ruination of Donald Trump and everything he promised to do for the American people. Now, you got about 2 minutes. Tell me where I'm wrong, Greg.
Well, as I said with Abu Ghraib, no one cares about the torture. They're titillated by the sexual element. That is what has captured the world. Rand study in Saudi Arabia, torturing prisoners, showed that. And it's worked like a charm. Because right now, everybody's paying attention to all this, what was it? Anthony Weiner, Weinergate, and his wife, Huma, who's supposedly sleeping with Hillary Clinton. It goes on and on. But in the meantime, we have had 10 aircraft carriers that have become disabled, basically challenging our control of the high seas. And no one seems to be concerned about that. They're, as they say, it's called redirection. They're looking in one place at something very titillating, and something very bad is going on someplace else.
So you're telling me Pizzagate and the pedophilia that is ingrained in the power structure in Washington, D.C. is nothing but a redirection. We shouldn't bother with it. Is that your opinion on this?
Yeah. Oh, yes. In the little time I have, when I was in Iraq, I had one of my informants tell me, look, you people are watching what's going on at Abu Ghraib prison, and the greatest war profiteering scheme is going on right under your nose, and no one knows it in the Persian Gulf. All right, it works like a dream. Okay.
I do understand that, and I do agree with you on that. But I also would not downplay. Again, a huge part of our conversation here was the strings they have on all of these politicians. And
yes.
When you look at the in-depth ingraining of this pedophilia in the UK, it's coming out in Germany, it's coming out in Italy, and it is massively rampant in the political structure in this country. I do believe that is playing a very large part in the struggle for power between these elitist castes right now. I do believe that.
Well, and
I concur 100%. There's no question. All right, 100%. It is effective and working. Look at David Petraeus, the head of the CIA. He knew the whole world was watching him, and he still couldn't resist carrying on in a nefarious manner. All right, nefarious behavior. He put the security of America at tenuous danger. All right, that was the last director of the CIA. All right, so yes, we have a critical issue here, and the thing is, it's going to get much bigger, okay, before it's finally settled. In fact, I don't think it ever will be settled completely.
No.
But the thing is, go ahead.
I think that the legitimacy of this whole ring is of extreme importance. And I also think that there are going to be so many ties to that, including if you go back to what you were talking about in reference to cocaine. And where there is a lot of illegal behavior, that's going to be another component. But if you expand it even further, we know that there was trade going on between human trafficking, arms, and drugs. So there is a lot more than just this one story. So while it may become more blown up for redirection so that the right hand can't see some of the other things that the left hand is doing, there is still going to be other illicit and criminal behaviors that are taking place that may be of extreme significance.
Right. Okay. I'm going to wrap this up real quick. I've got to. Again, when we do a discussion, the three of us, there's never enough time. But we will do another show in a few more days, and we'll get that out. And it'll, I don't know, be part 5 or part 6 now. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have General Kopinski back on again, probably within the next week. Along with Gregory, and we're going to do another show. But let me wrap this up by saying this, okay? All of the things that Greg has talked about, all of the things Rebecca has talked about, all of the things you've heard me talking about, they all wrap back to one thing, okay? This is what we call today the deep state. What is the deep state? This is a shadow government. What do we mean by shadow government? These are people who stand behind the scenes and pull the strings of their puppets. Who are their puppets? These are the people who we consider to be our leaders. These are our congressmen. These are our senators. These are our governors. These are our presidents. These are our secretaries of state. These are our secretaries of defense. These are the puppets. The deep state is the individuals who pull the strings, the shadow government. So when we talk about all of this going on, when I talk about a civil war going on between elitist castes, we don't see as much of this for 2 reasons. One, you have a mainstream media that absolutely will report on it only if they're absolutely forced to and as little as possible. And 2, they're most effective when nobody sees what they're doing. This is why it's called the shadow government or the deep state. It is their absolute or as close to absolute control over the leaders that gives them the power to shape and direct an entire nation. Gregory, we're always glad to have you here. You are a virtual cornucopia of information. We're going to be doing another show in a couple of days. You're aware of that. And before you cough to death, please say goodnight to everybody watching, and we thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show, Roger. And in a closing note, I would like to state, pay attention to Mr. John Podesta in the coming weeks, all right? And when this comes out, there will be something called, and nobody's ever heard of these, called the Bradbury Memos. And this will lay all of this to bear. The Bradbury Memos and Mr. John Podesta. All right?
I totally agree. Rebecca, you want to take us out?
Absolutely. I want to thank you, Greg, so much for being with us again today. And I want to thank all of our viewers who have been tuning into our series on some of the amazing things that are starting to come out and the validity of them. Thank you very much for watching. You've been watching Eradicating Programmed Ignorance. Stay tuned for some more upcoming of this series.
Have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Bye all.